Dog won't stop barking at Dragon Ball on street. What police find next leaves everyone in shock. The Dragon Ball hit the pavement with a hollow thunk that made Max's ears prick forward. Sarah Collins watched her canine partner's reaction through the cruiser's rearview mirror, noting the subtle change in his posture. After 6 years together in Atlanta PD's K9 unit, she'd learned to read his body language like a book. Right now, every line of his muscular frame spelled trouble. "Third one this week," she muttered, killing the engine. The July heat shimpered off the asphalt, turning the financial district into a concrete oven. Most officers would have dismissed the call as trivial, just another piece of anime merchandise abandoned on the street. But Sarah hadn't made detective by ignoring patterns, and Max's behavior was setting off every alarm bell in her head. The Belgian Malinois was already standing in the back seat, his dark eyes fixed on something beyond the windshield. His tactical harness gleamed black against his tawny fur, the police camera mounted on it catching the afternoon sun. "Okay, partner, let's check it out." Sarah adjusted her bulletproof vest and stepped out into the sweltering heat. The orange sphere sat innocently near the entrance of Atlanta's largest corporate hub, its 4 stars gleaming under the summer sun. A small crowd of onlookers had gathered, smartphones raised to capture what they probably thought was a clever marketing stunt. "Clear the area, folks. Police business." Sarah's voice carried the authority of a veteran officer, sending the spectators shuffling back. Max moved with practiced precision, circling the perimeter she established with his nose close to the ground. Everything about the scene looked normal, too normal. The Dragon Ball was positioned perfectly, as if placed rather than dropped. The pavement around it was clean, despite the usual grime of downtown Atlanta. It was the kind of detail most people would miss, but it made Sarah's neck prickle. She reached for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Collins. I'm at..." Max's bark cut through the air like a gunshot. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm as her partner's behavior shifted dramatically. Gone was the methodical search pattern. Now he was fixed in place, hackles raised, emitting the low, continuous growl she'd only heard a handful of times in their partnership. "What do you see, boy?" Sarah approached the sphere cautiously, years of experience making her hyper-aware of her surroundings. The first thing she noticed was the weight. It was too light for its size. Then her fingers detected something else, microscopic perforations in an irregular pattern across the surface. A flash of movement caught her eye. In the reflective windows of the office building, she spotted a dark van pulling up slowly at the end of the block. Max's growl deepened. "Dispatch, requesting backup at..." The crack of gunfire shattered the afternoon calm. Sarah dove behind a concrete planter, pulling Max with her as bullets chipped the pavement where they'd stood seconds before. The Dragon Ball rolled away, forgotten in the chaos. "Shots fired! Shots fired at Peachtree and 5th! Officer needs assistance!" Max's muscles coiled under her hand, ready to spring. The van's engine roared to life, tires squealing against asphalt. Sarah knew they had seconds to make a decision. Protocol said to wait for backup, but years of instinct told her if they lost the van now, they'd lose something much bigger. "Track 'em, boy!" They burst from cover in perfect synchronization. Predators now, rather than prey. Max took point, his powerful legs eating up the distance while Sarah followed, calling their position into her radio. The van weaved through traffic, but they had something the suspects didn't: intimate knowledge of downtown Atlanta's maze-like streets. "Cut through here!" Sarah commanded, and Max immediately veered into an alley she knew would intersect the van's most likely escape route. Their footsteps echoed off brick walls as they emerged onto a parallel street, just as the van screeched around the corner. The driver's face registered shock as he realized his mistake. The alley had led them right to a construction zone that bottlenecked traffic to a single lane. Sarah raised her weapon, taking position behind her cruiser's open door. "Atlanta PD! Stop the vehicle!" Time seemed to slow. Sarah could hear her heartbeat, feel Max's presence at her side, steady and unwavering. This was what they trained for, what their entire partnership was built on: absolute trust in moments of chaos. The van's engine revved. Instead of surrendering, the driver cranked the wheel hard, mounting the sidewalk in a desperate attempt to escape. Max was already moving, anticipating Sarah's command, before she gave it. "Stop that vehicle!" The Malinois launched himself with explosive power, a blur of dark fur and focused determination. He hit the van's front tire with precision, teeth sinking into rubber with enough force to shred it instantly. The vehicle swerved, scraping against a construction barrier before skidding to a stop. Sarah approached, with her weapon drawn, Max falling into position beside her. The driver's door slowly opened, hands raising in surrender. But as she moved to make the arrest, Max's posture changed again. His attention wasn't on the driver. It was fixed on the back of the van, where something was emitting a faint, rhythmic beeping. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized the sound. It was identical to the barely audible hum she'd detected from the Dragon Ball just before the shooting started. Whatever they'd stumbled onto, it was far from over. In fact, Sarah realized as she glimpsed the complex array of electronic equipment through the van's broken window, they'd just scratched the surface of something much darker than either of them could have imagined. "Stay alert, partner," she whispered to Max, knowing the real danger was just beginning. "I have a feeling this is going to be one hell of a case." The industrial district loomed ahead, like a concrete graveyard, abandoned warehouses casting long shadows in the fading daylight. Sarah Collins kept one hand on her weapon, while the other gripped Max's tactical harness, her partner's muscular frame taut with anticipation. The beeping from the van had led them here, but the driver they'd arrested wasn't talking. "Track," she whispered, and Max's nose immediately went to work. 6 years of training kicked in as the Belgian Malinois quartered the area, moving from shadow to shadow with deadly precision. The scent trail from the van was still fresh. The first warehouse yielded nothing but dust and forgotten machinery. The second made Max pause, his ears swiveling toward a sound Sarah couldn't hear. She keyed her radio, keeping her voice low. "Collins to dispatch. We're at the Marshall Street warehouses. Requesting silent approach backup." Static answered. Sarah tried again, but the radio remained dead. Max looked up at her, reading the tension in her posture. They were alone out here, and something was interfering with their communications. A flicker of light from the third warehouse caught her attention. Max was already moving, staying low as they approached a broken window. Sarah peered inside, and her breath caught in her throat. The warehouse floor had been transformed into a high-tech workshop. Rows of workbenches held dozens of Dragon Balls in various stages of assembly. But these weren't toys. The outer shells were split open, revealing sophisticated circuitry that pulsed with tiny LED lights. "What the hell have we stumbled into, partner?" Max's answering growl was cut short by the sound of approaching vehicles. Sarah pulled him back into the shadows as 2 black SUVs rolled up to the warehouse entrance. Men in tactical gear emerged, carrying cases of equipment. They moved with military precision. These weren't street criminals. Sarah's phone vibrated in her pocket. No signal, but something was trying to connect to it. She glanced at the screen and felt her skin crawl. An app she'd never installed was running, streaming data to an unknown location. "The Dragon Balls," she whispered. "They're not just surveillance devices. They're mobile signal interceptors." Max's ears flattened against his skull as footsteps approached their position. Sarah held her breath, counting shadows on the wall. At least 6 hostiles, maybe more inside. The odds weren't good. They needed evidence. Sarah pulled out her backup phone, the one she kept turned off except for emergencies. Carefully, she began photographing the workshop through the window. Each image revealed more disturbing details: blueprints of corporate buildings, security system schematics, and what looked like classified police documents. A metallic click froze her in place. Max tensed beside her, ready to spring. "Detective Collins," a familiar voice called from the darkness, "step out where we can see you. Slowly." Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. It belonged to Captain Marcus Rivera, her former mentor at the academy. The man who'd helped her become a detective. The man who'd paired her with Max. "Marcus?" She kept her hand on her weapon, mind racing. "What are you doing here?" "Insurance," he replied. "Those Dragon Balls weren't supposed to attract attention, but here you are, just like always, digging where you shouldn't." Sarah's mind flashed back to other cases that had gone cold unexpectedly. Investigations that hit dead ends just as they were getting close to something big. How many had Rivera buried? "The task force corruption cases," she said, pieces clicking into place. "The ones that disappeared. It was you, among others." His voice hardened. "Last chance, Sarah. Walk away. For old time's sake." Max's growl deepened, vibrating through her bones. She felt his muscles bunching, ready for her command. They were partners until the end, no matter the odds. "You know I can't do that, Marcus. Then I'm sorry about this." The night erupted in gunfire. Sarah rolled left as Max launched right, a tactic they'd perfected over years of training. Her first shot took down the nearest attacker, while Max's powerful jaws found another's arm, the man's scream echoing off warehouse walls. Sarah used the chaos to her advantage, firing and moving, always staying one step ahead of their attacker's night vision equipment. Max was a shadow among shadows, appearing and vanishing like a ghost, his attacks precise and devastating, but they were still heavily outnumbered. A bullet grazed Sarah's arm, and she heard Max yelp, a sound that turned her blood to ice. They needed an exit strategy. Her hand found a pipe on the ground. With practiced accuracy, she hurled it through the warehouse window, shattering glass and setting off a cascade of security alarms. The sudden noise and light disoriented their attackers, buying precious seconds. "Max! Marathon!" It was their code for a strategic retreat. The Malinois immediately disengaged, racing to her side. Together, they sprinted through the maze of warehouses, using every trick they knew to lose their pursuers. 10 minutes and 12 blocks later, they finally stopped in a secluded alley. Sarah quickly checked Max for injuries, relief flooding her when she found only a minor cut on his flank. He licked her wounded arm in return, his dark eyes full of concern. "I'm okay, partner." She pulled out her backup phone, thankful she'd managed to keep it during their escape. The photos were there, proof of Rivera's operation. But they weren't safe yet. If her former mentor had this much influence, nowhere in Atlanta was secure. Max nudged her hand, his posture alert, but steady. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Sarah scratched behind his ears, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. "We need to go off the grid," she told him, already forming a plan. "But first, we're going to need help from an old friend." As if understanding the gravity of her words, Max pressed closer to her side. The night wasn't over, and dawn seemed very far away. But they had what they needed most, evidence of the conspiracy, and each other. Sarah took one last look at the warehouse district before leading Max deeper into the shadows of Atlanta. The real hunt was just beginning, and this time they were the ones being hunted. The motel sign buzzed overhead, its neon glow casting strange shadows across the room. Sarah Collins sat on the edge of the bed, methodically cleaning Max's wound, while her own arm throbbed beneath its hasty bandage. Her partner stayed perfectly still, though she knew the antiseptic stung. "Almost done, boy." Her voice was barely a whisper. Even here, 30 miles outside Atlanta, they couldn't risk being overheard. Max's ears twitched at every passing car, his body tensing until the sound faded. The betrayal had shaken him too. Dogs might not understand human corruption, but they knew when trust was broken. Sarah's phone, her backup, with the incriminating photos, lay on the bedside table. She hadn't dared to send the evidence to anyone yet. Rivera's reach was too extensive, his influence too deep. The realization made her chest tight. How long had he been playing them all? Her mind drifted back to her first day at the K9 training facility 5 years ago. She'd just made detective, riding high on a string of successful cases when Rivera called her into his office. "Got something special for you, Collins," he'd said, that familiar fatherly smile on his face. "Come with me." The kennels had been loud that day, dogs barking and handlers calling commands. But one cage was silent. That's where she first saw Max, a young Malinois sitting alertly, watching everything with intelligent eyes. "Nobody wants him," Rivera had explained. "Too intense, they say. Washed out of 2 training programs already. But I see something in him. Same thing I see in you." Sarah closed her eyes, the memory sharp as broken glass. Had it all been manipulation? Setting up pieces on a board, placing his pawns exactly where he needed them? Max nudged her hand, pulling her back to the present. His dark eyes held the same steady intelligence that had caught her attention that first day. No, she decided. Whatever Rivera's game was, he'd made a crucial mistake. The bond between handler and dog couldn't be faked. She remembered their first training session. Max had been everything the report said. Intense, driven, almost uncontrollable. Other handlers watched from a safe distance, expecting disaster. "He's not aggressive," she told Rivera afterward. "He's frustrated. All that intelligence, all that energy. He needs a purpose. Like someone else I know," Rivera had replied with that knowing smile. Now she wondered how many other promising rookies he'd guided over the years, positioning them just so. Max's head snapped toward the window, a low growl building in his chest. Sarah moved instantly, weapon drawn, taking position beside the door. Headlights swept across the parking lot. "Easy, boy," she whispered, though her own heart was racing. The car passed without slowing. She returned to the bed, pulling out her phone to review the photos from the warehouse. The technological sophistication of the operation was stunning. The Dragon Balls weren't just surveillance devices. They were mobile hacking platforms, capable of intercepting any digital communication within range. A news alert popped up on her screen. "Atlanta PD detective missing after shooting incident." The article quoted Captain Rivera, expressing deep concern for his former protégé's safety. "Playing it smart," she muttered. "If she surfaced now, she'd be branded a rogue cop, her evidence dismissed as fabrication. Everything she'd worked for would be destroyed." Max pressed against her leg, offering silent support. Sarah ran her fingers through his fur, finding comfort in the familiar texture. Together, they'd solved cases that seemed impossible. They'd tracked killers through storms, found missing children in wilderness, and brought down drug operations that seemed untouchable. But this was different. This wasn't just about catching criminals. It was about exposing corruption in the very system they'd sworn to protect. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Need help? Remember Thunder Road." Sarah's breath caught. Only one person knew about Thunder Road, her former partner in internal affairs, Emma Chen. Now with the FBI, Emma had been investigating police corruption until her sudden transfer 2 years ago. Another piece clicked into place. Had Emma gotten too close to Rivera's operation? Max's tail thumped once against the bed. He remembered Emma too. She'd always brought him special treats during their joint operations. Sarah typed a response using their old code. "Weather forecast uncertain. Need clarity." The reply came quickly. "Storage Unit 23, Highway 78. 1 hour. Come alone." Max whined softly, reading her tension. Sarah checked her weapon, then looked at her partner. "Sorry, boy, but alone never includes you. We're a package deal." She gathered their sparse belongings, mentally mapping the safest route to Highway 78. If this was a trap, they'd be ready. If it wasn't, maybe they'd finally get some answers. "Let's move, partner." She clicked off the room's light. Time to find out how deep this rabbit hole goes. Max took point as they slipped out into the darkness, his powerful frame moving silently despite his injury. Sarah followed, equally quiet, equally alert. The night air carried the promise of rain, good weather for hiding, bad for scent tracking. As they made their way to her backup vehicle, Sarah's mind returned to another lesson Rivera had taught her. The best cops aren't the ones who can solve every case. They're the ones who know which cases need to be solved, no matter the cost. She hadn't understood what he meant back then. Now, watching Max check their surroundings with practiced efficiency, she finally did. Some cases weren't just about justice. They were about protecting the very foundation of law enforcement itself. "We're going to make this right," she promised, both to Max and to herself. "Whatever it takes." Thunder rumbled in the distance as they drove away from the motel, leaving no trace of their presence. Somewhere in the city they'd sworn to protect, a corrupt system was spreading like cancer. But Sarah and Max had something Rivera hadn't counted on, a partnership forged in fire, tested by time, and stronger than any betrayal. The storm was coming, and they would be ready. Lightning split the sky as Sarah pulled into the storage facility, the flash illuminating rows of identical metal doors. Max's breath fogged the passenger window, his eyes tracking movement in the shadows. The facility should have been empty at this hour, but Sarah counted 3 parked cars scattered across the lot. "Stay sharp, partner." She killed the engine, but left the key in the ignition. 5 years of undercover work had taught her to always have an escape route. They found Unit 23 at the far end of the complex. Sarah noted the security camera above it was dark, disabled or broken. Her hand rested on her weapon as she approached, Max moving silently beside her. A figure emerged from behind a nearby unit. "Your dog's getting grey around the muzzle." Sarah's tension eased slightly at the familiar voice. "Still faster than your evidence processing, Emma." Emma Chen stepped into the dim light, her FBI windbreaker dark with rain. She looked older than Sarah remembered, new lines etched around her eyes. 2 years of investigating police corruption would age anyone. "Inside," Emma gestured to her unit. "We don't have much time." The storage unit was cramped but organized, walls covered with case files and surveillance photos. A laptop hummed on a folding table, multiple screens showing data streams Sarah recognized from the Dragon Ball devices. "You've been tracking them," Sarah realized. "For months." Emma pulled up a map of Atlanta, red dots pulsing at strategic locations. "The Dragon Balls started appearing 6 months ago. At first, we thought it was corporate espionage. Then we found this." She typed a command, and the screen filled with intercepted communications, police radio traffic, dispatch calls, internal memos, all flowing through Rivera's surveillance network. "He's not just monitoring corporations," Sarah said. "He's building a shadow intelligence network inside the department." "Bigger than that." Emma opened another file. "Rivera's got contacts in the DEA, FBI, even Homeland Security. The Dragon Balls are just the visible part. The real operation is—" Max's growl cut through the darkness. Sarah's hand flew to her weapon as headlights swept across the storage unit's door. "Down!" Emma launched forward, tackling Sarah as bullets punched through the metal door. Max sprang into action, positioning himself between the shooters and his partner. Sarah rolled behind a filing cabinet, returning fire through the holes in the door. "How did they find us?" "The Dragon Balls," Emma grimaced, pressing a hand against her bleeding shoulder. "They don't just intercept signals, they track any device that connects to them. Your phone." "Damn it!" Sarah had turned it on to check the location. "Max, guard!" The Malinois took up position by Emma, while Sarah moved to the laptop, quickly copying files to a thumb drive. More vehicles were arriving outside, engines growling in the rain. "Rivera's clean-up crew," Emma said through gritted teeth. "They've been one step behind me for weeks. Sarah, that drive, it has everything, all the evidence, all the connections. You have to get it out." The sound of boots on wet pavement grew closer. Sarah counted at least 8 distinct footsteps. The odds were getting worse by the second. "We're not leaving you." "Yes, you are." Emma pulled out her backup weapon, checking the magazine. "I'll keep them busy." "There's a drainage tunnel behind Unit 30. It leads to the river." "Emma, your dog isn't the only one getting grey, Sarah." Emma managed a tight smile. "Sometimes the best move is letting your partner take point while you cover their 6. Max whined softly, picking up on the tension. Sarah felt the weight of the thumb drive in her pocket, heavy with evidence that could bring down Rivera's entire network. "Besides," Emma chambered around, "I've got a dozen agents en route. Just need to hold out till they arrive." The storage unit's door buckled under a battering ram. They had seconds at most. "Max, escort," Sarah commanded. The Malinois immediately moved to Emma's side, understanding his new mission. "He won't leave you," Emma warned. "Max, stay, protect." Sarah put every ounce of authority into the command. This time Max held position, though his eyes pleaded with her. "Good boy." She met Emma's gaze one last time. "Don't you dare die. Just get that evidence to Assistant Director Morrison. He's clean." Emma tossed her a key. "Black sedan, north lot, go!" Sarah burst through the rear door as the unit's main entrance exploded inward. Emma's gunfire erupted behind her, covering her escape. Max's bark joined the chaos, her brave partner guarding her friend to the last. Rain hammered her face as she sprinted between the storage units. Bullets sparked off metal walls around her. She returned fire without slowing, making each shot count, just like Rivera had taught her in the academy. The irony wasn't lost on her. A figure stepped out ahead, weapon raised. Sarah dropped and slid on the wet pavement, shooting upward as she passed beneath their aim. The man fell, and she rolled to her feet without breaking stride. Unit 30 appeared through the rain. The drainage tunnel gaped behind it, dark water rushing below. More shots peppered the ground at her feet. Sarah dove into the tunnel just as an explosion rocked the storage facility. The blast wave pushed her deeper into the darkness, cold water soaking through her clothes. Her heart screamed to go back, to Max, to Emma, but the weight of the thumb drive reminded her what was at stake. The tunnel seemed endless, every splash echoing off concrete walls. Her lungs burned as she pushed forward, letting the current help carry her downstream. Behind her, sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, the tunnel opened onto the river. Sarah pulled herself onto the bank, muscles trembling with exhaustion. The storage facility was hidden by trees and darkness, but she could still hear sporadic gunfire. Her radio crackled. The water hadn't killed it completely. Through the static, she caught fragments of police chatter. Multiple units responding, FBI on scene. Possible officer down. "Hold on," she whispered, not sure if she was talking to Emma, Max, or herself. "Just hold on." The thumb drive was still secure in her waterproof pocket. She had the evidence. She had a name, Assistant Director Morrison, and somewhere in the rain-soaked night she had a partner and a friend fighting to give her this chance. Sarah forced herself to her feet, getting her bearings. The FBI building was 10 miles north. If she could reach Morrison, if the evidence was enough. A dog barked in the distance, sharp, authoritative, familiar. Max calling out his position. Calling out that he was alive. Sarah allowed herself one small smile before melting into the shadows. The night wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time since this started, she had what she needed most. Hope. The FBI building rose like a fortress through the pre-dawn mist. Sarah Collins pressed herself against the wall of a neighboring parking structure, scanning the street below. 3 unmarked cars had passed in the last 10 minutes, all with familiar silhouettes behind the wheel. Rivera's people were waiting for her. Her sodden clothes clung to her skin, but the thumb drive remained secure. Somewhere across the city, Emma was either in custody or... Sarah pushed the thought away. Focus on the mission. That's what Rivera had taught her back when she'd believed in him. Her burner phone, bought with cash an hour ago, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Morrison compromised. Do not approach FBI building. Meet at the old K9 facility. 1 hour. The K9 training center had been abandoned after budget cuts last year, its remaining dogs transferred to other units. It was where everything had started, where Rivera had first partnered her with Max. Max. Her chest tightened at the thought of her partner. The sporadic radio updates had confirmed a K9 unit was involved in the storage facility firefight, but nothing more. Sarah pulled up the files from the thumb drive on her burner phone, looking for anything she might have missed. The Dragon Ball network was ingenious, each device acting as both a surveillance tool and a relay point, creating a web of intelligence gathering that covered most of Atlanta. But there was something else, buried in the code. Her eyes widened as she finally understood. The Dragon Balls weren't just monitoring communications. They were collecting authentication keys, passwords, digital signatures. Rivera wasn't building a surveillance network. He was assembling the pieces to infiltrate every major law enforcement database in the country. The sound of helicopter rotors pulled her attention skyward. Police choppers were moving into search patterns across the city. Time was running out. The journey to the K9 facility took 40 minutes of careful navigation through back streets and maintenance tunnels. Sarah emerged 2 blocks from the facility, the old chain-link fence rising before her like the border of another world. Rain had washed away most traces of the past, but she could still see the worn paths where hundreds of K9 teams had trained. Movement caught her eye, a shadow passing behind the administration building's broken windows, then another by the kennels. Rivera's people were already in position. Just like old times, Collins? Sarah spun, weapon raised. Rivera stood in the open, hands empty, looking exactly as he had in her academy graduation photo. Same fatherly smile, same confident stance. Only his eyes were different, harder, colder than she remembered. "Where's my dog, Marcus?" "Safe, for now." He gestured to the facility. "Walk with me. Let's discuss your future." "You mean like Emma's future?" Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or just annoyance. "Emma made her choice. Like you're making yours." Sarah kept her weapon trained on him as they walked. Rain dripped from the kennel roofs, a steady rhythm like a countdown. In the distance, thunder rolled across Atlanta. "Why the Dragon Balls?" she asked. "Why not just plant regular bugs?" "Because people are predictable." Rivera's voice took on the teaching tone she remembered from the academy. "They see something interesting. They post about it. Each social media hit, each curious onlooker taking photos. They all connect to the network. And once they connect, you own their devices. Maximum coverage, minimal exposure, the anime connection?" He chuckled. "Everyone assumes it's viral marketing, hidden in plain sight." They reached the main training yard. Sarah counted at least 6 armed figures in her peripheral vision, all waiting for Rivera's signal. A familiar bark echoed across the yard. Sarah's heart jumped as Max emerged from the shadows, Emma's FBI windbreaker clenched in his jaws. There was blood on his tactical vest, but he moved with purpose, eyes locked on his partner. Remarkable animal. Rivera watched Max approach. Even after we evacuated the storage facility, he kept searching. "Found Emma's jacket in the tunnel, tracked you all the way here. That kind of loyalty is rare. That kind of loyalty is what you never understood." Sarah met Max's gaze, reading 6 years of partnership in his stance. "Ready, boy?" Max's muscles tensed. The same coiled energy she'd seen 1,000 times before. Rivera must have recognized it too, because his hand moved toward his jacket. "Sarah, don't—" She was already moving. "Max, take him!" The night exploded into chaos. Max launched himself at Rivera as Sarah dove behind a concrete barrier, bullets sparking off its surface. The sound of Max's attack mixed with Rivera's shout of surprise and pain. Sarah rolled to her knee, picking her targets with practiced efficiency. 2 shooters went down before the others realized she knew exactly where they were. The same positions she'd used during countless training exercises. Max had Rivera pinned, the older man's gun arm locked in powerful jaws. Sarah emerged from cover, weapon aimed. "Call them off, Marcus." "You think this changes anything?" Blood ran down Rivera's arm, but his voice remained steady. "The network's already built. The protocols are in place. Even if you arrest me—" Sirens cut through the rain as FBI vehicles swarmed the facility. Flashlights bobbed along the fence line as heavily armed figures moved into position. "Sarah!" Emma's voice carried across the yard. "FBI, we've got the place surrounded." Understanding dawned in Rivera's eyes. The thumb drive, the chase, the final confrontation, all orchestrated to gather his entire network in one place. "Max!" Sarah gave the command to release. Her partner immediately backed off, taking position at her side. She knelt to check him for injuries, finding only shallow cuts. "Good boy. The best boy." Emma secured Rivera as more agents moved in to collect his people. "Assistant Director Morrison sends his regards. The real one, not the voice on your phone." Sarah scratched behind Max's ears, feeling the last hours catch up with her. We got them all? Every Dragon Ball, every conspirator. Rivera's network is finished. Dawn was breaking over Atlanta as they led Rivera away. Sarah watched her former mentor shuffle toward a waiting transport vehicle, already looking smaller, older. Just another corrupt cop who'd lost his way. Ready to go home, partner? She asked Max. His tail wagged once, but his posture remained alert. Even now he was watching, protecting, ready for whatever came next. Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of the past hours finally lifting. They had done it, together, as always. 1 month after Rivera's arrest, Sarah Collins stood in the back of the crowded courthouse, watching her former mentor being led away in handcuffs. Max sat at attention beside her, his tactical vest replaced with his formal K9 unit harness. The jury had taken less than 3 hours to reach their verdict. 25 years, no possibility of parole. Emma leaned against the wall next to them, her arm still in a sling but healing well. 17 conspirators in custody, 300 Dragon Balls recovered, and intelligence agencies across the country cleaning house. Not bad for a week's work. Sarah watched Rivera disappear through the secure door. He hadn't looked at her once during the trial, not even when she testified about the night at the storage facility, about the years of manipulation, the carefully placed pieces, the trust he'd betrayed. He really thought he was untouchable, Emma said, reading her expression. That's why he chose the K9 facility for the final confrontation. His pride couldn't resist the symmetry. Max's ears perked up at approaching footsteps. Assistant Director Morrison emerged from the crowd, looking considerably more relaxed than he had during the past month of investigations and hearings. Officer Collins, he nodded to Sarah. I hear the Atlanta PD's K9 unit is getting some upgrades. New training facility, expanded budget, something about recent events highlighting their importance. Sarah smiled, scratching behind Max's ears. We'll put it to good use, sir. I don't doubt it. Morrison's expression turned serious. The FBI's cyber division is also expanding. We could use someone with your experience, someone who understands both the technical and human elements of modern police work. It was a generous offer. Sarah looked down at Max, who stared back with complete trust. Thank you, sir, but Atlanta's home. Besides, she grinned, my partner's not much for desk work. Morrison laughed. Can't say I blame him. Keep up the good work, both of you. As he walked away, Emma pushed off from the wall. Speaking of work, Mike mentioned something interesting on the scanner this morning. Suspicious objects reported near the airport, described as glowing orbs with stars. Sarah tensed, but Emma held up her good hand. Relax. Just some anime convention promotions. But it got me thinking, Rivera's network might be down, but there are probably others out there. People who saw what he built and thought they could do it better. Let them try. Sarah straightened her uniform. Ready for patrol, partner. Max jumped to his feet, every muscle radiating eagerness. Some things hadn't changed. He was still the same intense, driven dog that no one had wanted, the same loyal partner who'd followed her into darkness and helped bring her back out. They walked through the courthouse together, drawing respectful nods from officers and civilians alike. The morning sun felt warm on Sarah's face as they emerged onto the street where their patrol car waited. You know, Emma called after them, most people would take some time off after everything that happened. Sarah opened the car door, watching Max settle into his customized back seat. His dark eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, alert and ready, always ready. Most people don't have a partner like mine. Atlanta spread out before them as they pulled away from the courthouse. Its streets and alleys, its shadows and secrets, its endless possibilities for both good and evil. Sarah smiled as Max's nose pressed against the window, already scanning for anything out of place. Let them try, she thought again. Whatever came next, whatever threats emerged from the city's depths, she and Max would be ready. Not because they were the best, or the smartest, or the most decorated, but because they were together. Sarah keyed her radio as they turned onto their patrol route. K9 Unit 7 beginning patrol. All sectors clear. Max's soft woof of agreement made her laugh. In the distance, Atlanta's skyline caught the morning light, familiar and new all at once. Another day was starting, another shift beginning, another chance to make a difference. And that was all they'd ever needed.